Welcome back. As we mentioned, Republicans are gearing up to run on the so-called one big beautiful bill in the 2026 midterm elections. But there are a couple of incumbent Republicans in key battleground seats who already know they won't have to worry about making their case to voters. During the height of the debate over the bill, North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis announced that he will not be seeking another term. He ultimately voted against the package. And now Nebraska Republican Don Bacon also says he plans on retiring after this term, telling NBC's Scott Wong that he doesn't have the hunger for another grueling campaign season. In contrast to Tillis, Bacon voted yes on the president's big agenda bill. And joining me now is Nebraska Republican Congressman Don Bacon. Congressman, thank you so much for giving us some time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
I do want to get to Ukraine. I know you're very passionate about that topic and your decision to retire from the House. But let's talk first about your vote on the so-called one big beautiful bill. Late last month, you joined 15 of your fellow House Republican colleagues in signing a letter to Speaker Johnson. I'm going to read from the letter. It said, quote, "Protecting Medicaid is essential for the vulnerable constituents we were elected to represent. Therefore, we cannot support a final bill that threatens access to coverage or jeopardizes the stability of our hospitals and our providers." You still ended up being a yes vote. What do you say to your constituents who might be confused about how you got to a yes, especially given the projections that this is going to cut Medicaid spending by $1 trillion and result in millions losing their coverage?
A lot of the discussions and, I guess, debate internally in the House, but also with the Senate, we were trying to negotiate, get the best Medicaid deal that we could. So we were pushing to get the best deal that we could. Now, out of the House, what we passed there was largely my recommendations of focusing on work requirements, which was if you're 18 to 64 years old and you're healthy, you're mentally healthy, physically healthy, they should either work 20 hours a week, looking for work 20 hours a week, volunteering, or taking classes. 72% of Americans like that. So most of those savings that we got were work requirements, and most Americans support that. Now, the CBO also said that we have roughly 1.6 million Americans who are ineligible, another 1.2 million who are there illegally. We also have some Americans that are drawing Medicaid from 2 different states. Those are the areas that we focused on in the House, and I think most people support that. We want to keep Medicaid for the healthy, or for those who need it the most, our children, disabled adults, and so forth. And now the Senate took it a little bit further and cut down some of the payments to go to our hospitals. But then they came back with a $50 billion replenishment for rural hospitals to try to mitigate the cost there. I would have preferred the House bill. But in the end, I thought the good in the bill overweighed the bad. That we're going to keep the tax cut stable, protect the child tax credit. We're going to beef up our defense that we need to in a bad way, and things like that. But I had to weigh the whole bill.
Yeah. OK, so let's talk about your political future and, the kind of the big picture for political observers here. They see that both you and North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, serving in 2 major electoral battlegrounds, announced your retirement kind of at the height of the debate over this bill. You voted for it. He voted against it. Does that send the message that just in general, this bill may be hard to run on for your colleagues that are going to stick around?
Some people could look into it, but frankly, I decided not to run because I've done it 5 times, and I can work 14 hours a day, and I do. I win by 2 points. In times where I was projected to lose, by the way, and elections that Harris won my seat by 5, Biden won my seat by 6. And so I could work 14-hour days, win by 2 points, and I just rather spend more time with my family. I want to still serve my country, but going into the House with 435 members, and working that hard just to get to be one of the 435 members in often a dysfunctional environment. I'd rather spend more time with my wife. I got 4 kids, 8 grandkids. And the timing was, I knew that I had to release my fundraising quarterly reports at the end of June or early July. And I knew people were going to see my numbers. So I just thought I might as well announce now, just because people are going to figure it out when they see lower fundraising numbers.
So you'd already kind of decided.
That was the timing.
You decided before it had even gotten to the heat of this debate,
yes.
Is what you're saying, yeah. But, I mean, just if you were still running, do you think that this bill would have helped your reelection campaign?
Well, surely the Democrats will demagogue how many people. I mean, they'll say 9 million people were kicked off of Medicaid, but when you peel it back, and 2/3 of that are work requirements, and also the rest are ineligible, illegal, or people are in two different states, Medicaid, people are like, oh, okay, that's more understandable. But if you're explaining, it's hard. You're not always winning, as they say. Now, I would have ran on protecting the child tax credit, protecting their income taxes from not going up 20%, and that we're fixing defense. There's a lot of good parts of this bill too, but there's no doubt that the Democrats will, and that's why I thought the Senate version was a mistake. The House version was easier to defend, and I thought the Senate put us in a more thin ice to try to defend this bill.
All right. You are still going to be a congressman here for about a year and a half, so you're still an important player in all of this. And I want to talk about Ukraine. Sources tell NBC News that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was responsible for pausing weapons shipments to Ukraine. That pause later overturned. You told my colleague Scott Wong that whoever ordered the weapons pause should be fired. Do you think Secretary Hegseth should be fired as a result of this?
You know, I've said this before about the Signal Gate. It wasn't handled well. The secretary should have taken responsibility, admitted he made a mistake, but instead he doubled down, blamed the journalist, and then denied there was a problem with putting sensitive data on an unclassified system for attack. And I called for his resignation or being fired then, and I feel the same way now. When he makes the decision to not send weapons to Ukraine that was appropriated by Congress, signed by the previous president, and he didn't even notify President Trump or seek his approval, and it embarrassed the president. He had to address this to a world stage why these weapons were shut off, and he didn't know. And so, yes, the Secretary of Defense should have showed better judgment here. And by the way, it's clear that he and the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy are not supporters of Ukraine. And I think they view Europe in the same way that Europe's not pulling its weight. I look at it bigger. If Ukraine falls, our national security interests are gravely hurt. Moldova will fall next, maybe Azerbaijan, maybe Georgia. The Baltics feel like they're seriously under threat. General Petraeus just said the other day that Lithuania would be the next country to be attacked. This is serious stuff if we don't prevail in Ukraine. And I don't know why we have some Republicans who can't see this so clearly.
Well, to that end, President Trump's tone as it relates to Vladimir Putin in particular seems to be shifting. He seems to be upset with the way that Vladimir Putin has conducted himself throughout this. He thought that he would come to the negotiating table, and he hasn't. Do you think that President Trump would be willing to do what it takes to defend Ukraine? In the past, he has said he's not looking to reauthorize more funding for Ukraine. He wanted that to come to an end. From your sense of this, is there a chance that perhaps he's going to be a more forceful defender of Ukraine than he has been in the past?
Well, he's tilting that way now based on what he's seeing from Putin. By the way, most of us could tell Putin's a bad man. He's killed all of his rivals, and he's just done terrible things. I mean, 40-some-odd assassinations in Great Britain done by his FSB agency there. I mean, he's a bad leader. He's an evil leader. And it should be clear to everybody who this guy is. But it seems to me that the President Trump is seeing this more clearly now. What I would advise him, we don't want to send troops to Ukraine. We're not looking to do that. But we should reauthorize large weapons, deliveries to Ukraine, long-range precision weapons, more air defenses. And we need to help them prevail. Putin's got to come to the realization that he cannot win. He's already suffered 1 million casualties. And the more weapons we can provide, at some point he's going to say, I cannot win this war. And we got to help him get there.
All right. Before you go, I'm just interested in your take on the future of the Republican Party. Is there a place for someone like you in the Republican Party going forward? I know you haven't ruled out the idea of maybe running for an executive branch place, maybe even the White House at some point. Is there room for folks like you in the Republican Party still?
Well, I'm going to make the case for it. I love our country. I'm a Ronald Reagan guy through and through. My first campaign that I got very interested in was 1976 when he ran against Jerry Ford. I became a Reagan guy then. And I bought into his philosophy. I believe that America is a leader in the world for democracy, free markets, rule of law, but we can't do it on our own. We need strong alliances, and we need to treat our allies with respect. I also believe that the Reagan era philosophy was one of being respectful towards our political opponents. We don't want to demonize them. They're Americans all the same. We got to reach across the aisle and work together. And I don't see that right now. I'm tired of the demonization. I'm tired of the way we're treating our allies. I think we could do much better.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to speak out for a return to normalcy and also decency. I think Americans are craving that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Congressman Bacon, I'm glad still get to chase you around
Thank
the
you.
halls of Congress for at least another year or so. Thank you so much for being on. We appreciate it.